Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you again for joining us today at the NGO CSW apparel event. I wanted to also take this opportunity to thank NGO CSW68 for the opportunity to hold the event as well. My name is Muskaan Waraich, and I will be moderating throughout the session. I would like to begin by doing a land acknowledgement. The land that I'm based on is a traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe people, many who continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaty and is protected by the Dish One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today's gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. Acknowledging reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and relationship with Indigenous people. Merely acknowledging the historical ramifications of colonization on Indigenous communities falls short of our responsibility. We must prioritize to uplift Indigenous voices, the preservation of natural resources, advocacy for climate change, and ensuring access to clean water for reservations. As settlers, it's crucial for us to actively participate in listening, learning, connecting, and sharing with Indigenous people. By doing so, we can collaboratively work towards truth and reconciliation. Today, we'll be discussing the theme of economic empowerment of young professionals bridging the gender gap in the economy. In nations worldwide, the enduring issue of gender wage disparity persists, with women consistently earning less than their male counterparts. In accordance with our world data, the gender gap in the economy persists due to occupational segregation, disparities in pay and promotion, cultural norms and biases, limited access to leadership roles for women, and discriminatory laws and policies. Both globally and within the United States, women continue to be underrepresented in high-level, well-compensated positions while being disproportionately overrepresented in low-paying roles, in accordance with inequality.org. Furthermore, women of color, transgender individuals face economic challenges, including poverty, unemployment, and various others, as outlined by the research. Recent UN reports have shed light on the failure of the current economic models to drive us towards gender parity. Only 62% of women are part of the labor force, compared to 93% of men, signaling challenges in women's economic empowerment. It is imperative to recognize that addressing the gender gap isn't just a moral obligation, but also a strategy for global economic prosperity. Research by the UN suggests that closing this divide could significantly boost the global GDP by an impressive 35% of average. With that in mind, I'm thrilled to open discussion on the theme of economic empowerment of young women professionals, bridging the gap in the economy. Our first panel discussion will delve into the economic challenges and gender equality, while our second panel will focus on working towards solutions to balance and empowerment with economic landscape. With that being said, I am super excited to introduce our first panelist, Kelicia Massala, who is a master's student in information technology law, specialized in intellectual property law at the University of Montreal. She re-owned her advocacy work in gender equality, notably as a driving force behind Girl Up Quebec, where she received the Girl Up Project Award from the United Nations Foundation in 2023. Kelicia focuses her efforts on two critical issues: international gender equality and the importance of representation. In 2022, she founded the annual Girl Up Quebec Festival to spotlight the influential women in the community. Moreover, she made headlines on International Women's Day 2023 for her collaborations with Hershey Canada, featuring her face on Hershey's chocolate bars sold nationwide. Thank you so much, Kelicia, for joining us today.
Hello, Muskaan. Hello. Thank you so much for the warm welcome. Hello, everybody. I hope you're doing well. And yeah, I hope, Muskaan, you're doing great.
Thank you so much, Kelicia. How is everything? I know you just came back from CSW. How was that? How was it being in New York, being at the forum, being at the UN headquarters?
It's always great to go at the CSW because it's like you are surrounded with amazing women, various conferences, discussions that really just enlighten you more and empower you more. And I had the opportunity to engage with like remarkable individuals and organization committed to advancing gender equality and women's empowerment. And this year, more like the other years, because I've been going there since like 2019. This year, I just really wanted to like focus on Africa more and, know the real issues going on there and the statistic that we're growing into gender equality initiatives going on there. So we also had like a conference hosted by United Kingdom, and we delved into the critical topic of adolescent girls, priorities and solutions. And by the way, one of our Girl Up sister, Aliyah Logan, was there. She moderated the whole panel. That was so exciting to see. Alongside Catherine Roussel, which is the executive director of UNICEF. And they emphasized that education remains a cornerstone for empowering girls worldwide. They highlighted that adolescent girls are twice as likely to have access to education as boys, and underlining the necessity of prioritizing initiatives that keep girls in school. Additionally, ensuring access to healthcare emerged as another essential component of their overall well-being. The discussion also revolved around the UNICEF survey. They did like a survey and initiative on that, shedding light on the urgency of addressing issues such as child malnutrition and healthcare access, as they are intricately linked to the empowerment of adolescent girls. And then I also had conferences on unpaid care work in Africa, hosted by the Economic Commission for Africa, the Southern Africa Trust, and the Zimbabwe Women's Resource and Communication Network. And they brought attention to the disproportionate burden borne by women in this domain. Discussion and highlighted the need for robust public services and infrastructures to alleviate this burden effectively. And furthermore, the conference emphasized the importance of accurate measurement, as without proper data, addressing unpaid care work effectively remains challenging, as we know. Empowering women in conflict prevention work was another significant theme at the conference, hosted by the Permanent Mission of Slovenia to the United Nations, alongside various organizations such as the GNWP. The discussion underscored the urgent need to include women and girls in peace building efforts, as they are often disproportionately affected by conflict. The conference also emphasized the importance of providing women with decision-making power and amplifying their voices in conflict resolution processes. Additionally, the conferences on gender transformative digital skills education that I was a part on Wednesday, hosted by the International Telecommunication Union, highlighted the critical role of digital literacy in empowering women and girls in the digital age. Discussions centered around strategies to bridge the digital gender gap and promote gender equality in the digital space, as we know is very important, especially nowadays. Furthermore, we had the conference on promoting the economic inclusion of Francophone women, hosted by the Organisation Internationale de la Francophonie, Organisation Internationale de la Francophonie, emphasized the importance of targeted initiatives to empower Francophone women economically, which was very interesting because, as you may know, I'm a Francophone woman, so I really was looking toward this conversation, and it addressed challenges such as access to finance, skills development, and entrepreneurship opportunities. The session on practical cases of women's socioeconomic and cultural empowerment, as well as promoting women's political participation, provided valuable insights into the complexities of advancing gender equality at the grassroots level. These discussions underscore the importance of tailored intervention and collaboration among stakeholders to address the multi-phase barriers faced by women and girls worldwide. So in conclusion to all that, because it's a lot that's been going on, I just wanted to do like a sum up. The Commission Status of Women this year provided like a platform for constructive dialogue and meaningful meaningful exchange of ideas. It reinforced the importance of collective action in advancing gender equality and women's rights worldwide. So yeah, thank you once again for this question, Muskan. And yeah, it's just good things to do when you go back to the CSW each year.
Yes, of course. Well, it looked like such an impactful CSW with a wide range of topics to discuss when it comes to accelerating gender equality. That being said, I know today's theme we'll be discussing is economic empowerment of young women professionals, bridging the gender gap in the economy. What does that theme mean to you, especially as a student, as an activist, working in Canada, working towards accelerating gender equality?
Well, I do think that it's very complex, but like I think to truly grasp the essence of this, we really have to like dissect it piece by piece because economic empowerment entails equipping individuals, particularly women, with the tools, resources, and opportunities necessary to participate fully in the economy, to make autonomous decisions about our lives, and to contribute meaningfully to social progress. And it encompasses access to education, but also financial resources, employment opportunities, and the ability to exercise agency in economic decision making processes. Now, when it comes to the gender gap in the economy, despite we can see significant strides in women's rights and gender equality, disparities also persist, across various economic indicators, and women continue to face barriers such as unequal pay, limited access to credit and financial services, underrepresentation in leadership positions, and systemic biases that hinder their economic advancement. And according to the World Economic Forum's Global Gender Gap Report of 2022, at the current rate of progress, it will take approximately 257 years to close this economic gender gap globally, which is crazy. This sobering statistic underscores the urgency of our collective efforts to address this issue. So, what does bridging the gender gap in the economy mean to me in practical terms? I think it means like dismantling the whole structural barriers and discriminatory practices that hinder women's economic participation and advancement. It also means we have to, create an enabling environment where women have equal access to education and skills development, where they are afforded the same opportunities for career advancement and leadership roles as their male counterparts, and where policies and programs are implemented to address the unique challenges faced by women in the workforce. Now, when it comes to the data, because I had to, see a little bit of data to contextualize the magnitude of the gender gap in the economy, in terms of the workforce participation rate, stands at around 48.5% compared to 75.1% for men. Moreover, women are disproportionately concentrated in low-paying and informal sectors with limited access to decent work and social protection. This not only perpetuates economic inequality, but also impairs the overall economic growth and development. When we examine the gender pay gap, the disparities become even more glaring. On the average, women earn only 81 cents for every dollar earned by men, according to data from the International Labor Organization. And this wage gap widens further for women of color and those from marginalized communities, exacerbating existing inequalities and perpetuating cycles of poverty and inclusion. Like, as we know, it's something to be a woman, but it's also something to be a woman of color, especially in this theme that we're talking about, the economic challenges and gender gap issue. So addressing this gender gap in the economy requires a multi-phase approach that encompasses policy reforms, corporate practices, because it's also inside of the corporate thing that you have to do some things for that, societal attitudes and individuals' action. Governments also, they must enact and enforce legislation such as equal pay laws, parental leave policies. I'm seeing more and more of that. I'm seeing more and more parental leave policies, which is a good thing, but it's not enough still. and measurement to combat workplace discrimination. Furthermore, businesses also have a crucial role to play in fostering inclusive work environments, implementing diversity and inclusion initiatives, and breaking down the barriers that prevent women from advancing into leadership position. At the societal level now, we must challenge ingrained stereotypes and biases that perpetuate gender inequality and limit women's economic opportunities. I do think that education and awareness raising campaigns are essential tools in this regards, as they can help change attitudes and foster a culture of gender equality and inclusivity. I do think that it starts from us, and it starts from what we are going to share and teach to the younger generation, because that's the only thing we can save actually right now. It's, making sure that your sisters, your nieces, your cousin know that no matter what they want to do, they can do it, and that the gender shouldn't be an issue for that. I do think that we have to ingrain them in that, and I do think we also have to not block them of certain field because they are a certain way, they look a certain way. I always talk about my parent on that, but I'm so grateful that my parent never told me that, oh no, you can't do that, you can't do this because of that, because of this. So I was not aware, that some few were going to be hard because they did not ingrain that in my mind. So for me, no matter what I wanted to do, I could have done it and I could do it. So that really helped me. So I do think that we have to teach the younger generation that anything can be done. And individually, we can all contribute to bridging the gender gap in the economy by, like I said, advocating for change, supporting women by advocating for supporting women-owned businesses, women of color-owned businesses, mentoring young women professionals, and challenging discriminatory practices wherever we encounter them. So to conclude all of that, I would say that bridging the gender gap in the economy is not only a matter of social justice, but also prerequisite prerequisite for sustainable and inclusive economic growth. By empowering women economically, we unlock their full potential as agents of change and drivers of innovation and catalysts for progress. So we have to commit ourselves to this noble endeavor and work tirelessly towards a future where every woman and girl has the opportunity to thrive and contribute to a more prosperous and equitable world. And like I said, it really starts with the younger generation, if we can do something about it. And also it takes also men, men has to understand that it's not just us that has to workshop about this. We know that, we know there's gender gap, we know there's discrimination, all that. I do think that some men needs to have those workshops and learn about the data that I just stated. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Like you mentioned, it's not just, you have to really dissect the topic itself for us to understand what it means to bridge the gender gap within the economy. I think something I liked what you mentioned, Kelicia, was the importance of education. I think that is a first step. And even us on this call, through Zoom, doing this discussion itself is the first step when it comes to bridging the gap within the economy, because there's many viewers listening here today where they understand that you have to begin with challenging those biases, those norms you have towards women, women of color, transgender, and more in regards to when it comes to economic empowerment. I also really liked how you mentioned about how economic empowerment is not just a social justice issue, it's also the importance of sustainable economic inclusion and also within global economy as well. Like the UN reported, there will be, I think I'll just go back to my stats just so I don't mess it up. Research by the UN suggests that closing the divide could significantly boost the global GDP by an impressive 35% on an average. That itself shows that it's not just a social justice issue, it's a strategy for global economic prosperity, especially in the world that we're living in today. That being said, you mentioned about intersectional identities, and this kind of jumps into my next question. How do intersectional identities such as race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, and disability intersect with gender to compound challenges faced by young women professionals in the economy?
Wow, that's such a profound and pertinent question because the intersectionality of identities is such a complex and multi-faced issue, especially when it comes to understanding the challenges faced by young women professionals in the economy. So we have to first of all acknowledge that gender inequality in the workforce is not a standalone issue, but intersects with various other dimensions of identity. Take race and ethnicity, for example. Women of color, particularly Black, Indigenous, and Latina women, face compounded barriers in the workplace. Despite making significant strides in educational attainment, they continue to be underrepresented in leadership positions and face persistent wage gaps compared to their white counterparts. And I've seen something not so long ago telling me that, who told me that women of color are now one of like the most educated in America, which is crazy, but they're also the most underpaid. And according to data from the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, for every dollar earned by white men, Black women earn approximately 63 cents, Indigenous women earn 60 cents, and Latina women earn 50 cents. These disparities not only reflect systemic biases, but also underscore the need for intersectional approaches to address them comprehensively. Moving on to sexual orientation, LGBTQ plus individuals often encounter discrimination and prejudice in the workplace, which can exacerbate the challenges faced by young women professionals. Studies have shown that LGBTQ plus women are more likely to experience workplace harassment and discrimination compared to their heterosexual counterparts. According to the Human Rights Campaign, 46% of LGBTQ plus workers remain closeted, at work due to fear of discrimination, highlighting the pervasive impact of workplace culture on their professional experiences. Moreover, transgender women face unique challenges, including higher rates of unemployment and workplace violence, further compounding the barriers to economic empowerment. Additionally to that, disability, of course, intersect with gender to create additional hurdles for young women professionals in the workforce. According to the World Bank, approximately 15% of the world's population lives with some form of disability. And women with disabilities face heightened levels of discrimination and exclusion. They are less likely to be employed, earn lower wages when employed, and face greater barriers to accessing education and training opportunities. Furthermore, the lack of accessibility and accommodation in the workplace further marginalize disabled women, hindering their full participation in the economy. In addressing this intersecting challenges, because there's so much intersection linked with gender gap, it is crucial to adopt an intersectional lens that recognizes the unique experiences and barriers faced by different groups of young women professionals. And this requires, because to fully understand this and recognize those unique experiences, this requires comprehensive policy intervention, including targeted affirmative action measures, anti-discrimination policies, and workplace accommodation to level the playing field and create inclusive environment where all individuals can thrive. And this is something that needs to be implemented in, all the corporate firm, all the workforce. Actually, it's so important. And I don't know if you've seen that, but a couple of months ago, some DEI, which is the department for how do you say it? It's the department that take care of inclusivity. A lot of DEI bureau in like school, university, corporate decided to quit, which is such a sad thing because we do need DEI. We do need people that recognize that we have different experiences based on who we are. And those different experiences and those differences in general bring barriers for us, especially young women professionals. Um, so yeah, I will say also furthermore that fostering diversity and inclusion in leadership position is essential for driving systemic change and dismantling the structural inequalities. Organizations must prioritize representation and amplify the voices of young women professionals from diverse backgrounds to ensure that their perspectives are reflected in decision-making processes. And so to conclude, the intersectionality of identities significantly compound the challenges faced by young women professionals in the economy. Addressing these challenges requires a multi-phase approach again that recognize the intersection nature of discrimination and disadvantage by adopting an intersectional lens, implementing targeted intervention, and promoting diversity and inclusion. We can pave the way for a more equitable and inclusive future where all young women professionals have the opportunity to thrive. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. I think you kind of touched upon very important points, but the main one I just go continuously keep going back to is the intersectional and how we have to look through an intersectional lens when we talk about bridging the gap in the gender economy, because everyone has different social markers that intersect and form forms of oppression and discrimination. And when we look through intersection lens, I think that is when we're working towards accelerating gender equality and bringing together the gender gap and narrowing down the gender gap, sorry. That being said, I wanted to kind of dive into your work, especially with Girl Up Quebec and other organizations as well. What are some key economic challenges you face yourself or you have seen people in your organization struggle with?
Oh, wow. First of all, organizing events and initiatives aimed at promoting gender equality and empowering young women. That's what we do. It often comes with its own set of economic challenges, from securing the funding for the venue rentals or logistical expenses to ensure accessibility for participants from diverse socioeconomic backgrounds. Navigating the financial aspect of our work requires creativity, resourcefulness, and resilience. It's so hard, because with the grow up team, we want to do amazing thing. We want to do events, we want to go abroad, we want to do program exchange, we want to do so much thing, but we don't have fundings most of the time. Grow up, so we do have, the Grow Up Project Awards that we win, but sometimes it's just very hard. And in the case of organizing events for Grow Up Quebec, one of the key economic challenges we have faced is securing sufficient funding to cover the costs associated with like I said, the venue rentals, guest speakers sometimes, but most of the time, our guest speakers are so understanding and they really want to just come to share the knowledge. But I also understand, guest speaker that wants to be paid because you're sharing your knowledge, valuable knowledge, and this need to be covered sometimes also. Promotional materials, this costs also. As a grassroots organization, we really heavily on donation, sponsorships, and fundraising efforts to finance our activities. However, limited resources and competition for funding within the nonprofit sector often pose significant barriers to realizing our ambitious goals, because there's so many organizations that need funds, right? So it's so hard. Sometimes I can do like a day for our event coming up this year. I can do like a day trying to fill some application for funding, but there's just so many organizations inside. So sometimes it's unlikely that you're gonna win, but you just do it anyway, and you pray that you're gonna have something. Furthermore, ensuring accessibility for all participants, regardless of their financial circumstances, is a fundamental principle that guides our work, because we want everyone to be a part of our event. We don't want to have a big amount of ticket prices like of $60. No, we don't want that. We know that our audiences are high school girl, college girl, young professional, and they are struggling, you know. So we have to make sure that our tickets are very are not that expensive. We recognize that economic barriers can prevent many young women from accessing opportunities for personal and professional development. And especially, when we do panels, we want them to listen to those panelists that have valuable knowledge to share. And sometimes those valuable knowledge is like it's even can be even more than money, because it's so important that you need to be boosted by those women to then confront life. Therefore we strive to offer we try to offer like subsidies to lower the cost, and alternative forms of support to ensure that our events are inclusive and accessible to individuals from diverse socioeconomic backgrounds. More recently, as we embark on our exchange program with Grow Up Kenya, we are confronted with the economic challenges associated with international collaboration and travel. Last year we did an event with Grow Up Cote d'Ivoire, but not all of our team were there. I was the one representing, so I was by myself. But this year is different because we are going with multiple members. And Girl Kenya is also coming to Canada in September, which is going to be so exciting. So facilitating cross-cultural exchanges requires financial resources to cover expenses such as airfare, accommodation, and programmatic activities. Additionally, ensuring equitable participation from both sides of the exchange, regardless of economic disparities, remains a priority for us. In response to these challenges, we have launched a GoFundMe campaign to raise funds for our exchange program with Grow Up Kenya. This campaign provides an opportunity for individuals and organizations passionate about gender equality and youth empowerment to contribute directly to our efforts if they want to. And every donation, no matter how small, makes a meaningful difference in supporting young women leadership development and fostering global solidarity, because we're going to Kenya to talk about menstrual hygiene and the menstrual problems that they're facing there. And we want to go there, but we also want to bring things there, pads and gifts and stuff. So it's challenging, but we hope that we can have the help of sponsors and people that just want to contribute. Therefore, I invite all of you to join us in our mission by supporting our GoFundMe campaign. It's not on the slide, but you can definitely have the link on Girl Up Quebec bio on Instagram, and helping us raise the necessary funds to make our exchange program a reality. And together we can overcome economic barriers and create transformative opportunities for young women around the world. In conclusion, while economic challenges are inevitable in our work, they also present opportunities for innovation, collaboration, and community support. By harnessing the collective power of individuals and organizations committed to gender equality, we can overcome these challenges and create a more just and inclusive world for all. So yeah, thank you for your support and solidarity. And that's what I had to say about your question, Ms. Ken.
Yes, for sure. I think I am on a similar boat with you when it comes to hosting events and then ensuring that everyone has the opportunity to attend. But I think so many times it's so unfortunate that we don't aren't able to because we ourselves don't have the funds to support young women as well. So I think it becomes very, I think, disappointing because especially with like nonprofit organizations, we're working towards empowerment and accelerating gender equality. But those are the struggles in reality that we face as we don't have the sufficient funds to support events and other collaborative events. Sorry. That being said, I would like to jump to the last question. How does the lack of access to professional networks and mentors impact young women's career advancement and economic empowerment? I knew you touched upon this a little bit before, but if we wanted to even dissect this topic a little bit more and kind of wrap up the discussion with.
Yeah, well, it's so important. Networking, mentorship, like Imagine a young woman just starting a career journey filled with ambition, talent, and determination. She has the skills and qualification, but without access to professional networks and mentors, she may find herself navigating a labyrinth of challenges on her own. And sometimes I say this, sometimes it's not just what you know, sometimes it's who you know. Of course, what you know is so important because you need to have some knowledge in the field you want to be in. But who you know is also very important, and people sometimes tend to forget that. Professional networks serve as pathways to opportunities, providing access to job openings, career advice, and potential mentors. They create spaces for learning, collaboration, and skills development. However, for many young women, especially those from underrepresented groups, accessing these networks can be daunting, if not impossible. And this is so true. Like, sometimes to go into certain sphere and have access to certain people is very, very difficult when you are in an underrepresented group, such as me, as a woman of color, Black woman, is can be very hard. Lack of access to professional networks often translates into missed opportunities for career advancement. Without connections in the industry, young women may struggle to find job openings, secure internships, or access mentorship programs. As a result, they may find themselves stuck in entry-level position with limited prospects for growth. Meanwhile, they have like master degrees, they have, so it's very, very challenging. Furthermore, the absence of mentors deprives young women of invaluable guidance and support. Mentors serve as trusted advisors, offering insights, encouragement, and career advice based on their own experiences. They provide a sounding board for ideas, help navigate workplace challenges, and advocate for their mentees' professional development. um I had a friend, she is a young woman and she aspired to break into the male dominated field of engineering. And despite her talent and passion for the subject, she faced numerous obstacles in advancing her career. Without access to a supportive network or mentorship, she struggled to find opportunities for advancement and often felt isolated in her workplace. It wasn't until she connected with a senior engineer who became her mentor that she gained the confidence and guidance she needed to navigate the industry successfully. So, sometimes you just need somebody to be like, it's going to be okay. Here is what you need to do. And moreover, professional networks and mentors play a crucial role in addressing gender biases and discrimination in the workplace. They provide young women with allies and advocates who can help challenge stereotypes, promote diversity, and create inclusive environments where all individuals can thrive. I'm in the law field, in IP law field, and when I got into the firm I work in right now, seeing a Black woman lawyer just in front of me, in front of my desk, was so motivating. I was like, oh wow, that's so good and so nice, and I can't wait to talk to her. I can't wait to know her. So, in conclusion, lack of access to professional networks and mentors represent a significant barrier to young women's career advancement and economic empowerment. Addressing this issue requires concerted efforts to create inclusive spaces, expand access to networking opportunities, and establish mentorship programs tailored to the needs of young women from diverse backgrounds. So, as we work towards building more equitable and inclusive workplaces, let us remember the transformative power of mentorship and the importance of fostering supportive professional networks. By investing in the next generation of female leaders, investing in us, and breaking down barriers to access, we can unlock our full potential and pave the way for a more gender equal future. So, my advice would be for us, even for me, like not being afraid to go out there and talk to people. And even if you're by yourself, you want to go to an event, you don't have friends to go with, you know what? Just go, and you don't know what's going to happen there. So, yes, that would be my answer to your question, Ms. Can.
Thank you so much for sharing, Kelicia. I think you bring a very important point up regarding mentors and professionals within the field that you want to go into. I think they play a very, very important role, especially for young women of color, wanting to pursue these roles, but not having someone to kind of seek guidance from or seek mentorship from. That being said, thank you so much, Kelicia, for sharing your expertise and insight, particularly highlighting the importance of tackling the gender gap through more of a multifaceted approach. This approach, like you mentioned, includes education reform within schools, policy revisions, government interventions, and creating inclusive environments within the workplace itself. At the same time, it's so important for us to acknowledge the intersecting identities encountered by young professionals in the economics field while understanding the support that's needed within nonprofit organizations, especially funding. That being said, we will be taking a coffee break. We look forward to our next session where we'll be delving into the solutions for achieving balance and empowerment within the economic landscape with Sinclair Warren. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us back. I'm super excited to delve into the second panel discussion focused on solutions to balance and empowerment within the economic landscape. That being said, I am super excited to welcome Sinclair Alexandria Warren, is a researcher, writer, and champion of women's rights. Currently, she's a champion at Madre, an international NGO that focuses on uplifting women and girls' rights in the global south. Sinclair's dedication to empowering women extends to her role as the United Nations Foundation keynote speaker, where she amplifies crucial conversations on gender equality and human rights. Her passions include menstrual equity, maternal health, and ending the weaponization of gender-based violence in areas of conflict. She does this by addressing the patriarchal folklore that has dominated our policies for generations. Sinclair's humanitarian work influences all her writings as she's dedicated to breaking down barriers and championing gender inclusivity, shame, dissipation, and policy reform. Sinclair has spearheaded two impactful initiatives: The Locker, consisting a network of lockers offering free menstrual care products, reproductive guidebooks, and empowering affirmations, and Point Blank, period, a groundbreaking menstrual equity focused on curriculum designed to eradicate stigma and ensure universal access. Throughout her career, Sinclair has collaborated with esteemed organizations such as UNICEF USA, Global Citizen, DoSomething.org, Intersectional Environmentalist, New York City Food Bank, and more, demonstrating her commitment to driving positive change on a global scale. Sinclair's unwavering commitment extends to disrupting injustice through storytelling, sparking crucial conversations, and advocating for lasting cultural change. Thank you so much, Sinclair, for joining us. It's super amazing to have you here at our panel discussion.
Thank you so much for, oh, lost my voice for a second. Thank you so much for having me. So great to have this conversation.
No, of course. Thank you. How are you today?
I'm great. I'm really happy it's finally sunny in New York City where I'm currently based. So I definitely getting all the endorphins in. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Did you have the chance to go to the CSW as well? I know at Kelicia went.
Yes, I was able to go to one event, and I'm actually speaking at another event tomorrow. I was at an event on Thursday focused on ending child marriage in the US. I was with an organization called Unchained at Last, which is the only organization that is primarily focused on ending child marriage in the US. And actually, which I found so interesting, that only in 11 states is child marriage completely banned, which is like insane because when you think about child marriage, especially as an American citizen, you think of it as an other issue that it's happening in other places, and it's really happening prominently in the US. So I'm very excited. It was a really great event, and again, I'm very excited to speak at an event tomorrow, and that is focused on social justice and poverty, within focusing on the obviously economic justice for women.
That is incredible. Thank you so much. I think I had no a clue as well regarding that because when I think of ending child marriage, I often look to global South countries, and it did not know the prevalence of it within North America as well. That being said, the theme again, like I mentioned to Kelicia as well, is focused on economic empowerment of young women professionals, bridging the gender gap in the economy. What does that theme mean to you personally as a student, as an activist, and more?
That theme means to me, I think it's really about the representation of women. I think it's really about being in this space and taking up that space. And I think the real goal of all of that is the normalization of women in these spaces, the normalization of women in leadership roles. And I think that really comes from having these conversations like this. I remember when I was younger and how essential it was for me to see women who looked like me, especially going back to Kelicia's mention about intersectionality. It's so important to have women in these spaces talking about this. And I think going back to your question, when I think about all the things that I'm doing, when you're mentioning that I'm in school, youth activist, all these other things, when I'm alone and I primarily work from home when I'm not in school, I think about how I'm not doing enough a lot. I think about how I should be doing this and I should be doing that, and nothing that I really do matters, especially when you're working from home and you're in these issues are so large. Really, when you think about advancing women in the economic field, that how can you really conceptualize that? Like, how can you feel like you're doing something? And it's so often to have imposter syndrome, especially as a woman, especially as a woman of color, when you feel like you're not doing enough. And it is so difficult to it's so hard to kind of grapple with the idea that you're enough in these spaces. And I just want to echo for all these people on the call that you are enough. And then I really have to remind myself that on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you for sharing that. I think I can also relate when it comes to once the day's over and you're kind of at home as well, where you see so much happening on the media and there's so many conflicts all over the world, and you're kind of left with that imposter syndrome, like, am I doing enough? Like, I'm at home about to go to sleep or whatever. Like, it's recognizing that privilege, but it's also understanding that you're doing as much as you can at the same time.
Definitely.
That being said, just, as I mentioned, how did you kind of balance your various roles as a young professional, student, and activist while ensuring your own well-being and personal growth?
Definitely. Yeah. I think I also just want to go back to imposter syndrome a little bit because it has affected my mental health so much. That I feel like when you're in this space and you see people doing these really amazing things and you're like, oh, I want to do that too. And especially kind of reiterating the idea of being a youth activist. I turned 24 last week, which was International Women's Day, which I feel like is very emblematic for the space that I'm in now, which is quite funny that I was like, oh my gosh, am I not like a youth anymore? Like, am I old? Like, am I too old to contribute? Am I too old to like have these accomplishments and have it still be great? Like, do people think like, oh, like it just doesn't matter anymore? Like I had this feeling, a lot of times I have this feeling that it doesn't matter. I should like kind of like let it go because I'm not going to be this like kind of girl wonder, child wonder, like basically saving the world at a very young age, and having that idea that it needs to be at a young age, it needs to be at this point in my life, it needs to be right now, or if it doesn't matter at all. And of course, there's so much urgency to really fixing these issues, to advancing women and the economic space, but it doesn't need to happen right now. It doesn't need to have everything at once. You don't need to do everything. You don't need to be this like magical superwoman person. Of course, I think I do really great things, but I don't have to come out of myself. I don't have to be this kind of superwoman, superhero to accomplish these things. And the way I really kind of tackled these challenges are doing these like daily affirmations to know that I'm enough. I know it might sound cheesy to some people. I live alone, which is great because I can talk to myself a lot. And I just like talk to the mirror and I tell myself I'm doing really great things. And I'll read through my bio and I'll read through all these amazing things that I've done and really acknowledge that and hold that space for myself. And also, I also really realize that even if I didn't do all these things, I'm still a good person. I think it really needs to be echoed that you don't have to like contribute to like, you don't have to like work at the UN. You don't have to save 30 million dogs or something like that to feel like you're doing something in this space and being a good person and being a humanitarian. And I think that's what's so important, and just engaging these conversations. Maybe if you just want to like help someone who dropped their groceries, like that's enough. Like what you're doing is enough. And I think really reminding myself that is so important. And I think with having a day that's organized, that I can kind of filter all these crazy thoughts I have all the time. It makes it a lot easier. So that's why I'm obsessed with Google Calendar. It makes my life so much easier. I put all the events that I'm doing. I even give myself breaks. I give myself time. Like I'll write Like this is a time to like take a break and like watch something. I think that's why it's so important to, I don't really like the phrase guilty pleasure. I think all the pleasures that we have are so essential to our mental well-being. And so sometimes I just want to go get a treat. Like sometimes I'm like, wow, I really deserve a cake right now. And that has really helped me tackle a lot of these challenges of giving myself a break, because when you're in this space, you really focus on such heavy, large topics. Like even I have a class on Wednesday nights that is primarily focused on human trafficking. I do that for 3 hours Wednesday nights, and it is just like so exhausting when I get out. And so like, I'll just watch cartoons when I after I get out of class, because it really helps my mental well-being, and it helps me be an active and present space person in this space.
Thank you for sharing. I think many listeners listening today can kind of relate to what you mentioned about how you have to give yourself breaks, and it's not a guilty pleasure, because I think then we don't really enjoy those breaks because we're kind of guilt tripping ourselves as well. Something
Mhm.
I also do is go for walks. I've
Yeah.
noticed that I can't personally stay in the same room that I'm working in, so I'll go outside for like a 10-minute walk and then refresh and then come back and start working. And but now just kind of jumping into, like you mentioned, about the different leadership roles you hold within various settings.
Mhm.
For you personally, how does representation of women in leadership positions, such as the position yourself, impact economic empowerment for young women professionals? And what steps can be taken to increase female leadership within the corporate world?
Wow, that's a good question. When I think about it, I really want to go back to the idea of taking up space is really the best thing that you can do. And to hone into that space, and especially in my own positionality, I often think that like if I mess up, like my phone dropped like 10, like I don't know, like 5 minutes ago, and I was like, oh my God, like my phone dropped. This is gonna like ruin the conversation. Or like I remember if I was in an interview and I stuttered on a word, like I'll hyper fixate on this like perceived mistake that I have done. And I just like it completely negates everything else I've done. And I will go on conversations like I'll call my mom or call my friends. And I was like, I just bombed this speech. I bombed this like interview, because I have this such a high expectation for myself. And I really focus in on perfection. And that is completely detrimental to everything that you want to do in life. Like it is very cliche, but it's so important to make mistakes, and it's so important to recognize your own humanity. And that's actually what makes your achievement so special, that you are a human being. And when you're in this space as a woman and as a woman of color in the corporate field, in the working world, it's so important to give yourself that grace and to know that when you are a leader, you have to be like authentic. Like I'm like to not perpetuate this idea that you have to be this perfect woman, this perfect person all the time, to say everything right at the right time, and to really just like take a breath and relax. And I think when you're really true to yourself and you're open with others, I think it makes other people really comfortable, and they feel like, oh my gosh, like I can be a leader too, because I don't have to have this type of degree, this type of to be like the most articulate person in the world. Like you can do so much with who you are already. And I think that's what's so important.
I think that's well said, because I think many of us within these spaces doing panel discussions, events, I think we try to articulate ourselves in a certain way. We don't want to say the wrong thing,
Mhm.
stutter, or even kind of mess up in itself. And we kind of take ourselves like, oh, we have to be this perfect person. Like we have to say the perfect thing. Like it can't be the other way. And I think this kind of also goes back to media, social media as well, because sometimes what we say can be twisted, turned, and then put onto the internet, and they'll kind of put it in a way like, oh, she said this or he said this. And it's like, no, I never said that. And
Mhm.
it's just like this whole cancel culture as well, which is very, very prevalent.
Yeah, and I think it's also about like letting that happen. Like I can't really hyper fixate on how what anyone thinks about me. And I can't think about like, oh, if I say this and this is gonna happen, and like really snowball. And in actuality, that none of that's happening. It's probably never gonna happen. I think sometimes you always think about how you always think that people think about you in the way that you think about yourself. So and no one does, because most of the time everyone's focused on themselves. So when you're just like thinking about, oh my gosh, I did this wrong, and this wrong, everyone's like, well, you did a really great job, Synclaire. Like, why are you so worried? And I think it's really just about like letting that go. Like for me, like a personal insecurity of mine is I'm a fast talker. I don't know where I get it from. I just like love getting the information out all at once. And I think it also kind of goes back to the idea that I feel like I need to do everything right now. And I just like, I'm a super competitive person. Like I just put a lot of pressure on myself. And so it like, I'm so focused on talking too fast, and I realize like that's just part of my personality. And I try my best to fix it when I can. But that's one thing you kind of just have to let go. And I think that's like so important being a person in the corporate field when advancing yourself, is that you need to have that transparency with yourself and with others, that this is like who I am, and whatever they bring to the table is totally fine as well. And I think that really addresses the idea of like intersectionality, where you have so many different identities, whether that's disability, sexual orientation, the way your gender identity, and that all can be an asset. None of this has to, and even unfortunately it has been treated like it is an insecurity or a flaw, but it when you embrace all of yourself, it really is your greatest asset.
Thank you for sharing. I think you always, it's summed up very well. That being said, I kind of want to jump into the next
Yeah.
question. How do the challenges of economic empowerment for young women provincials vary globally? And like you mentioned, with intersectionality as well, what can we learn from an intersectional approach to bridging the gap within the economic landscape?
Definitely. So for me, like gender inequality manifests in various forms globally, impacting the economic empowerment of women professionals. And coming from a menstrual equity experience, one significant barrier is period poverty. And so if you don't know what period poverty is, it's where the access of menstrual products as well as menstrual education can really impede upon girls, women, and other menstruators' quality of life. And I can really see this in the form of education. And when girls and women and menstruators aren't allowed to be in school because they're menstruating, and when you think about it, it is one of the most natural things for your body to do. It is a biological compulsion. You cannot control it. And in the US, nearly 1 in 5 girls miss school during their period. And this is such a pervasive issue because and also this issue is exacerbated in other regions like India and Tibet, and there's so many cultural taboos surrounding menstruation. And I truly believe this attributes to the limited access to resources. And this challenges so many women and girls and other menstruators, because when you don't have access to education, how can you be empowered in the economic space? How can you be a person in the working world when you have such a limited access to education because of something that you absolutely cannot control? And it is healthy and natural and something that you should never feel bad about. I remember when I was speaking at another Girl Up conference 2 years ago, someone asked me, like, how do you feel comfortable like having a tampon or having a pad or talking about your menstruation? And I was just thinking, and I was like, well, when your nose is running, you would get a tissue. And that's not embarrassing. There's nothing wrong with that. So it's the same thing when you're menstruating. And so I think that was what really propelled me to create Point Blank Period, the initiative that you mentioned earlier. And so Point Blank Period is a toolkit I developed to highlight the language and narratives and how it shapes our perceptions on issues such as tampon tax and patriarchal capitalism. And so tampon tax is actually really prominent in the US, where tampons and all other menstrual products have an extra tax. So they're regarded as a luxury item. So they're not similar to other medical items such as like Band-Aids or gauze. It's an extra tax. So menstrual products, I'm sure you know, are already very expensive. And so to have that extra tax when they really should be given away for free is just astonishing in the worst way. And we think of things as and it attributes to patriarchal capitalism, as well as things as the pink tax. So when items are regarded as a feminine product, so pink shaving cream or body wash, it's more expensive for women and girls. And you really think about how there's a cost to being a woman and girl. There's a cost to that. And then when we go back to thinking about how women and girls women in the space aren't paid as much as men, and how it's such a vicious cycle to really disempower women from such an intimate level when it comes to menstruation. And so that's why I think it's so important about the narratives that we share and the words that we use. I often really like to call it conversational activism, like what we're doing right now. We're just having conversations, and it might not seem like a big deal, but having these conversations, shedding light on these issues are so essential. And stop using language like oh, she can't do it because like she's on her period, or like how can a woman be president if she is on her period? Then like everything's going to kind of go crazy, which is really not true. And it really prevents and it really contributes to the policies of like, well, women and girls and menstruators on their period are crazy and it's a gross, weird private thing, then why would I want to give them menstrual products that are free? Why would I want to advance them in the workforce? Why would I want them to go to school? Because that's just such a terrible thing. And really, when we're just like, this is a natural part of our lives, this is a natural part of who we are, and there's nothing wrong with it, then I believe the policies are starting to change when we share these stories. And I think that's why it's so important from a minute level that individuals come who are obviously comfortable come together and talk about how these issues are affecting them, like share their own stories. And we can have all the data and sticks in the world, as I mentioned, the 1 in 5 girls in the US, but like who are those girls? It's important to know who is Synclaire, who is Kelicia, who are these people, and sharing them. And I think that's so much more impactful. And of course, the numbers are great, but who are the people behind the numbers? And I think that's such an important part of really advancing women in this economic space and empowering them.
Wow, I think that is very important, especially when it comes to when we're talking about statistics, especially. I think we like to put everyone to a number,
Yeah.
and it really diminishes the whole other side of them. Like, I'm a human before I'm a number, of course. I also liked how you mentioned about how when it comes to periods as well, there's such deep-rooted socially ingrained stigmatization that continues. And as much as we think that we have advanced when it comes to period equity, I think there's so much work still needing to be done, especially within the Canada. I know that we limited the tampon tax, but it's a very, impactful, but there's still so much work to be done, especially within schools across our provinces. While we do offer menstrual products free, the quality of the menstrual products are not good because they're not inclusive, because every woman's menstruator's flow is so much different, and one pad is not gonna be sufficient for another menstruator. So I think there's so much work still needing to be done when it comes to menstrual equity. That
Definitely.
being said, I would like to kind of go into our last question, especially since we're talking about bridging the gap, and your various roles, incredible roles that you hold, and it's absolutely amazing. I feel inspired myself today. The listeners that are listening today, and even after, what are as a woman, as a young woman in the leadership position, what advice would you give to other women striving to achieve balance and empowerment in their own lives and careers?
I think the best thing that ever really worked for me is the normalization of women in these spaces. I think it's such a tricky balance to have the proper representation and talk about all the systemic barriers that have prevented women of color, and other marginalized demographics from being in these spaces. But I think the end goal of advocacy is normalization. That I just want to be a person in this space. I want to be a person in leadership. I want my words and my thoughts to be acknowledged and seen and taken into account as a human being. I want the rights as everyone else, and I think that normalization is so important. So with that in mind, when I think about advice, I really think about just normalizing yourself in this space. It's not a miracle that you're here. You are so talented. You don't need these myriad of accomplishments. Again, when going back, you don't have to solve world poverty at the age of 12 to be important. All you have to do is just keep showing up every single day and taking up that space and being uncomfortable and being a little bit scared. I think that embarrassment is completely temporary. It will fade away. And the feeling you'll have after is forever. You'll always remember how you stood up for yourself. You'll always remember how you advocated for others. You'll always remember how you might have stuttered on one word, but you kept going. And it's really just like, again, the age-old quote, like if you fall 7 times, like you have to get up 8. Like you just have to get up and you have to keep trying. And I get so scared that what like all the things that I've been doing are just not going to matter in the end. But like it's just right now and being present in this and knowing that what I'm doing right now matters, if it only helps one person, that's enough for me. If it really just has been beneficial for myself and others, like that's great. And it doesn't have to kind of hit this global level all the time. When you think about things that are so big, it can be very overwhelming. And so I know that was a lot of advice. But I think maybe the three pillars are the normalization of yourself, taking up that space, and being a little scared, or maybe four pillars, and knowing that if you just help one person, or if you just really overcome your own personal goal, then that's enough for today.
Thank you so much. I truly do. I love how raw and real you are, especially within these spaces where I think we have to present ourselves a certain way,
Yeah.
and look a certain way, or even the way we talk as well. So thank you so much. I wanted to sincerely, I'm truly grateful for you sharing your individual invaluable insights on strategies to empower individuals within the economic sphere, specifically women. Your contribution, particularly drawing your personal experiences with imposter syndrome in a professional context, and your journey navigating the challenge of youth activism as a woman of color has provided deeper understanding on the importance of these topics. And as Kelicia mentioned as well, we must look for a multifaceted approach. That being said, I really did love how you shared the importance of asserting yourself within the economic arenas and the importance of embracing normalization, authenticity, and transparency over perfection. I think I can deeply resonate to this as well. Your perspective has significantly deepened my understanding, and I think the listeners listening today as well, on the importance of closing the gender gap within the economy and accelerating our gender equality efforts within the world. So thank you so much.
Of course, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Okay, thank you so much. Now we will be jumping into a quick video in the next slide, which will be focused on
Women
why
who
are
work
women
full-time
paid less
still
men.
earn 15% less than men. But that's not because they're paid less for the same jobs. It's because they're in different jobs. Women are in less senior jobs. In Britain, France, and Germany, 80 to 90% of executive jobs are held by men. Women also tend to choose different occupations. In America, over 80% of teachers, nurses, secretaries, and health workers are female, and these jobs tend to be lower paid. Primary school teachers in the West earn nearly 20% less than the average graduate job. Nurses earn less than police officers, cleaners less than caretakers. Women are as ambitious as men. They earn the majority of university degrees. In America, they now ask for promotions as often as men. But it's the price women pay for motherhood that holds them back. In Britain, 70% of mothers reduce their working hours or switch to a less demanding job, compared with 11% of fathers. In Australia, it's 56% of mothers and 19% of fathers. While in France, 55% of mothers scale back, compared with 13% of fathers. When an American woman goes back to work, her salary is on average lower than it would have been if she hadn't had a child. The race for gender equality is far from over. As more children choose non-traditional careers and men do more childcare, fewer working women will be held back.
Well, thank you so much, Kelicia, for sharing that video. In regards to the video shares the issue of gender gap that persists despite the progress made in promoting gender equality. The video sheds light on various factors that contribute to this gap, such as gender-based occupational segregation, the impact of womanhood on women careers, and the unconscious biases. Like mentioned in the video, women often face discrimination in salary negotiations or choosing low pay fields, which affect their earning potentials. Moreover, caregiving responsibilities tend to fall on disproportionately on women, further reducing their earning potential. The video highlights the need for policy intervention and the cultural shifts to promote gender equality and address these inequalities in the economic environment. That being said, I would also like to open this discussion to a Q&A in regards to both of our speakers, Kelicia and Synclaire. If any of the listeners today had any questions, feel free to pop it in the chat or raise your hand. Okay. Oh, I'm not sure if there's a hand in chat. Kelicia, I'm not sure. Did someone have something in the chat?
Somebody said that they had a hard time listening, but it was 20 minutes ago.
20 minutes. Oh, okay. Apologies for that. I know sometimes we have technical issues and technical difficulties, especially being on Zoom. So I apologize on that on my behalf. But if there are no other questions, that kind of sums up our NGO CSW parallel event on the economic empowerment of young women professionals and bridging the gender gap in the economy. I would like to again extend my gratitude to Kelicia and Synclaire for sharing their knowledge and expertise. I think listeners listening to here today are eager to implement the insights and solution discussed today when working towards bridging the gender gap and accelerating gender equality in an economic landscape. Thank you so much.